Something strange is happening right in front of us, and most people are pretending not to see it. Modern women, the same ones who were told they could handle everything, are breaking down under the weight of a life they were never prepared for. You see it everywhere. A woman screaming at an airport because a small inconvenience ruined her entire day. Another recording a meltdown in her car, blaming life being too hard because someone disagreed with her. Influencers crying on live streams because the real world didn't match the fantasy in their head. These moments aren't random. They're signs of a system collapsing, emotionally, mentally, socially. A generation raised on comfort, suddenly meeting reality for the first time. And that's when you realize something uncomfortable. It's not that life has become harder, it's that resilience has become weaker. Much weaker. Today's video isn't about attacking women. It's about understanding why so many of them can't cope when life stops catering to them, and why men who recognize this truth gain an unfair advantage in relationships, work, and power. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Look around long enough and you'll notice something almost unbelievable. The smallest responsibilities, the ones previous generations handled without thinking, now feel like mountains to climb. Paying a bill on time, showing up to work consistently, maintaining friendships without drama, keeping a room clean for more than 48 hours, making a simple decision without anxiety spiraling out of control. These aren't extraordinary challenges. They're the basic operating requirements of adult life. Yet for a shocking number of modern women, every ordinary task feels like a crisis waiting to happen. A text message becomes stress. A busy day becomes burnout. A minor disagreement becomes emotional trauma. And the more you watch, the more the pattern becomes obvious. They weren't taught how to handle life. They were taught how to escape it. A lifetime of instant comfort trained them to expect things to be easy. So when something isn't easy, it feels impossible. And what happens when simple tasks feel overwhelming? Everything becomes someone else's fault. The job is toxic. The schedule is unfair. The world is hostile. The responsibility is too much. But deep down, every man watching this knows the truth. Life didn't suddenly become complicated. It's just that many people were never prepared for the weight of real responsibility. And when you mix fragile expectations with real-world pressure, it's only a matter of time before the cracks start showing. Before everything collapses, there's always a moment when it all looks perfect. A moment where she feels untouchable, convinced she's finally living the life she deserves. It usually starts with the same story. I don't need stability. I want freedom. I want to live life on my terms. So she walks away from anything that feels steady or predictable. The long-term relationship that required effort? Gone. The job that offered security but not excitement? Left behind. The routines that kept her grounded? Abandoned for something more liberating. At first, it feels incredible. Travel, parties, attention, new experiences. The world becomes one big playground. Everyone cheers her on. Social media rewards the chaos. Strangers flood her with validation, and that high becomes addictive. It convinces her she made the right decisions, that her independence is proof she's winning. But here's the part no one talks about. Freedom without discipline slowly becomes self-destruction. Cutting ties feels empowering, until she realizes she cut the people who kept her balanced. Chasing excitement feels liberating, until she wakes up exhausted, anxious, and unrooted. Independence feels strong, until real life demands consistency, responsibility, and sacrifice. This is where the tension begins, because the life she imagined doesn't match the life she now has to maintain. And the very freedom she idolized quietly becomes the thing that starts pulling her apart. Then it happens. Quietly, slowly, without any dramatic moment to warn her. Reality starts pushing back. The same tasks she once brushed off as easy suddenly feel heavier than she ever imagined. Not because they're complicated, but because now she has to carry all of them alone. Groceries, bills, rent, deadlines, things that used to blend into the background, now sit on her shoulders like bricks. There's no one to remind her, no one to double check, no one to handle the unglamorous details in the background. she begins to understand something she never saw before. Men weren't controlling when they took care of things. They weren't restricting her freedom when they planned, organised and provided stability. They were carrying the invisible load so she didn't have to. But now she feels every ounce of what used to be done for her. The small repairs, the forgotten errands, the emotional stability someone else used to absorb, the mental structure someone else used to create. Handling life alone means every mistake is hers, every consequence is hers, every setback lands directly at her feet. What used to look effortless now feels like a constant battle. She used to think men had it easy, but now she realises they were doing more than she ever noticed, more than she ever appreciated, and the weight she once dismissed is now the weight slowly wearing her down. Independence looks beautiful from a distance. It sounds powerful, glamorous, a life where no one tells you what to do, where you answer to nobody, where everything is on your terms. But here's the part no one mentioned to her. Independence comes with a bill, and that bill is paid in energy, discipline, and emotional endurance. At first, she enjoys the freedom, waking up whenever she wants, doing things her way, making choices without needing permission. But the freedom high doesn't last, because behind every choice is a responsibility she didn't see coming. Suddenly she's juggling everything at once. Work deadlines, meals, bills, appointments, cleaning, budgeting, social commitments, emotional maintenance, all stacked on top of each other with no pause button. She thought being independent meant she could live life on her own terms. What she didn't expect was the constant pressure that comes with being the only adult in her life. There's no backup, no partner absorbing stress, no structure to lean on, no emotional anchor in the background. Every minor problem becomes a major interruption. Every delay feels like a disaster. Every responsibility feels heavier than it should. And this is where the loop begins. The overload loop. The more she tries to handle everything herself, the faster she burns out. The more burned out she becomes, the more tasks pile up. And the more tasks pile up, the more she feels like she's failing, even when she's doing everything right. This is the hidden cost of independence. Not freedom, but fatigue. Not empowerment, but exhaustion. Not having it all, but being overwhelmed by all of it at once. And as the loop tightens, she begins whispering the one truth she never thought she'd admit. This is harder than I thought. When the pressure becomes too much, she doesn't slow down. She performs. Because in today's world, struggle isn't something you deal with privately. It's something you broadcast. A bad day becomes a story. A meltdown becomes a reel. Tears become thumbnails. Frustration becomes relatable content. Instead of fixing the problem, she turns the problem into a performance. She sits in her car, turns on the front camera, wipes her face dramatically, and records a 5-minute breakdown, complete with captions about healing, boundaries, and self-care. Not because she wants answers, but because attention feels easier than accountability. She talks about how tired she is, but not about the habits causing the exhaustion. She talks about how no one understands her, but ignores the decisions leading her here. She talks about how life is too much, but edits the clip to look aesthetically chaotic. Pain becomes content, confusion becomes a trend, overwhelm becomes a brand. And every time the comments pour in, "You're so strong, you're so brave, you deserve better," it gives her a temporary high, a digital bandage over a real-world wound. But here's the problem. Validation isn't the same as growth. Public sympathy doesn't replace private responsibility, and the more she performs her struggles, the less she actually solves them. A home doesn't fall apart overnight. It breaks slowly, through small routines that disappear one by one. Meals stop being planned, laundry piles up, bills get paid late, mornings become chaotic, nights become emotional storms, not because she doesn't care, but because structure is something she was never taught to build, only something she was used to entering. When there's no stability in the home, everything else begins to collapse. Children feel it first. They sense the unpredictability, the sudden mood swings, the the rushed mornings, the forgotten commitments, the emotional overload that hits them without warning. Kids need routine the way lungs need air. They need consistency, quiet guidance, and predictable rhythm. But when the adult in charge is overwhelmed, stressed, and constantly firefighting her own life, the children end up navigating chaos they never created. The household mirrors the same pattern. Groceries run out. Tasks remain half-finished. Small problems grow into big ones because no one addresses them in time. A home without structure becomes a place of tension instead of peace, a place of survival instead of growth. And this is where the truth becomes painful. Stability isn't created by motivation, independence, or positive affirmations. It's created by discipline, emotional consistency, and the quiet strength to keep life steady, even when you don't feel like it. When those foundations are missing, the entire home, the routines, the relationships, the children, gets pulled into the storm with her. When life starts slipping out of her hands, she feels the chaos. But instead of looking inward, she looks outward. Everywhere, at everyone. It's never the habits, never the decisions, never the lack of discipline or boundaries. It's always something, or someone, else. If she's overwhelmed, it's because her job is toxic. If she's behind on bills, it's because life is too expensive. If her relationships fall apart, it's because men are the problem. If her home is unstable, it's because no one helps her. The accountability void grows larger each time she avoids confronting herself. And the more she avoids responsibility, the bigger the mess becomes. She's been taught to label discomfort as trauma, criticism as abuse, and consequences as oppression. So instead of changing the behavior causing the collapse, she changes the story to protect her ego. This is why nothing improves. This is why problems repeat. This is why every year feels like a reset of the same mistakes. Because when you remove accountability, you remove the possibility of growth. And the scariest part, she genuinely believes the blame she throws outward. She believes the world is mistreating her, while never noticing the patterns she continues to recreate. Until the day she finally realizes you cannot escape a problem you keep handing to everyone else. There's a reason so many modern women collapse the moment life stops feeling easy. They were raised in a world designed to protect their feelings, not prepare them for reality. From childhood, they were told they were special, deserving, powerful, and endlessly supported. But they were rarely told the part that mattered most. Life demands skills, discipline, resilience, and emotional strength. Instead of learning how to handle discomfort, they were shielded from it. Instead of being taught how to solve problems, problems were solved for them. Instead of being encouraged to build toughness, they were encouraged to express every emotion as if it were an emergency. So they grew up believing that life should feel good, that challenges are unfair, that stress is a sign something is wrong, and that any difficulty means someone else has failed them. But adulthood doesn't care about feelings. Bills don't care about mood swings. Responsibilities don't adjust to your emotional temperature, and reality won't soften itself just because you were never taught how to stand firm. This mismatch between the comfort they were raised in and the reality they now face is where the breakdown begins. They expected life to be accommodating. They expected relationships to be effortless. They expected success to come with support, praise, and hand-holding. But instead, they got a world that requires grit, competence, and emotional control. Things no one prepared them to develop. So when real life finally demands what comfort never taught, they crumble, not because they're weak by nature, but because they were never trained for the strength adulthood requires. Here's the part no one wants to say out loud. A shocking number of modern women want the benefits of a committed man, without giving anything that commitment actually requires. They want loyalty, without consistency. They want protection, without respect. They want a provider, without contributing stability. They want a husband, while acting like they're still single. It's a strange contradiction. They demand the highest quality man possible, but refuse to accept the responsibilities that come with being a partner. They want him to show up, solve problems, pay bills, plan the future, lead the relationship, and stay emotionally grounded, while they offer mood swings, minimal effort, and the belief that love should be enough. But relationships don't run on feelings alone. They run on roles, discipline, reliability, and shared effort. things many were never taught to value. So instead, they imagine a fantasy, a man who gives everything while requiring nothing, a man who commits fully while accepting disrespect, a man who builds a life while she refuses to build structure. This is the expectation delusion, wanting traditional male commitment with zero traditional female responsibility. And when reality doesn't match the fantasy, they blame men, blame modern dating, blame low-quality partners, never realizing the truth. You cannot demand a man's best while giving only your convenience in return. While everyone is focused on how overwhelmed modern women feel, almost no one talks about what this chaos does to men. Because men aren't just watching the collapse, they're living inside it. They're the ones constantly asked to understand, to be patient, to give more, even when they're already carrying the emotional weight of two people. They're expected to stay calm when she explodes, stable when she's inconsistent, responsible when she avoids responsibility, and committed when she's unsure of what she even wants. Over time, it wears them down, not loudly, quietly. A man stops arguing not because he agrees, but because he's exhausted. He stops sharing his thoughts not because he has none, but because he knows they'll be dismissed or twisted. He stops trying to lead not because he's weak, but because he's tired of being punished for doing so. This is why so many men are stepping back, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. They're realizing that giving everything only leads to being blamed, drained, and taken for granted. They're realizing that peace matters more than proving their worth. And they're realizing that sometimes the only way to stay strong is to walk away from what keeps breaking them. Men aren't checking out because they don't care. They're checking out because they finally do. There's a part of this conversation almost nobody touches, the women who aren't collapsing. The ones who handle their responsibilities quietly, consistently, without turning every inconvenience into a public crisis. These women exist. They work hard, manage their homes, raise their kids with structure, and solve their problems without broadcasting them. They don't blame the world. They don't play the victim. They don't melt down at the first sign of pressure. But here's the tragedy. They're paying the price for the ones who do. Men who've been drained, used, or manipulated don't make exceptions easily. They walk into new relationships with caution, suspicion, emotional armor. They're constantly waiting for the meltdown, the drama, the lack of accountability, because they've seen it too many times. So the competent women get treated like potential liabilities instead of partners. They have to prove they aren't like the others. They have to overcome a reputation they didn't create. They're judged by a standard they never contributed to. And it's unfair, deeply. Because the women who do the work, who show up with stability and maturity, end up swimming in a dating pool poisoned by the dysfunction of those who don't. Good women aren't disappearing. They're just overshadowed by the loudest, weakest voices. There's a truth most people don't want to hear, but it sits underneath every collapse you see online. The real world is indifferent. It doesn't pause for anyone's feelings, stress, exhaustion, or emotional turmoil. Life keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. The rent is due, whether you're overwhelmed. Kids need food, whether you're sad. Work expects you to show up, whether you slept or cried the night before. The car won't fix itself because you're anxious. Reality doesn't negotiate, it demands. For generations, people understood this instinctively. They didn't have the luxury of emotional breakdowns, public meltdowns, or sympathy from strangers. You solved the problem, or the problem got worse. Simple. But today, many believe that if they feel strongly enough, complain loudly enough, or express enough distress, the world will adjust to them. It won't. The universe doesn't run on emotions. It runs on action, structure, responsibility, and competence. Your feelings may explain why something is hard, but they don't erase the requirement to handle it. And once you accept that, something shifts. The pressure doesn't go away, but the confusion does. You realize life isn't unfair. It's just unmoved. You stop expecting sympathy to solve problems. You start building the strength to solve them yourself. Because at the end of the day, reality doesn't bend for anyone's feelings. It bends for those who adapt, endure, and rise to meet it. The most heartbreaking part of this entire collapse isn't the crying videos, the emotional chaos, or the overwhelmed adults. It's the children quietly absorbing the fallout. Kids don't get to opt out of instability. They don't get a break from inconsistency. They can't step back and reset emotionally. They simply live in whatever environment the adults create for them. And when the home is unpredictable, disorganized, or constantly on edge, children internalize it. They adapt in ways that cost them pieces of their childhood. You see it everywhere. The little boy who becomes the emotional anchor because mum is overwhelmed. The young girl who grows up thinking chaos is normal and stability is a fantasy. Kids who show up to school tired, anxious, unprepared, not because they're unloved, but because the structure they need simply isn't there. These children don't complain, they don't make viral videos, they don't point fingers, they just carry the weight. And years later, we wonder why so many teenagers are anxious, lost, or prematurely mature. They weren't raised. They were required to compensate. When adults collapse, children inherit the consequences. Their innocence becomes collateral damage in a world where accountability is optional and feelings dictate decisions. This silent generation is paying the price for choices they never made, and if nothing changes, the cycle won't stop. If you really want to understand why dysfunction keeps growing, don't look at the individual. Look at the reward system built around their behavior. We now live in a culture where struggle isn't just shared, it's incentivized. Post a breakdown online. You get sympathy, comments, attention, and sometimes even money. Admit responsibility. You get silence. Solve your problems quietly. Nobody notices. The modern validation cycle is simple. The more dramatic the struggle, the bigger the audience. The more emotional the confession, the more engagement it earns. The more chaotic the life, the more relatable it appears. So dysfunction becomes currency, a way to feel seen, supported, and significant. Meanwhile, women who handle their responsibilities without needing an audience get none of the social rewards. No applause, no viral moment, no comforting strangers. And because social media amplifies the loudest voices, the worst behavior becomes the most visible, and eventually the most normalized. People copy what gets attention. People repeat what gets rewarded. People imitate the behavior that brings social benefits. This is why dysfunction spreads, not because people want chaos, but because the culture praises the ones who fall apart and ignores the ones who hold everything together. In a world built on validation, whatever gets rewarded gets repeated. Here's the truth nobody wants to touch. Most modern women aren't collapsing because they're incapable. They're collapsing because they were never prepared for the world they stepped into. It's not a question of intelligence, talent, or potential. It's a question of conditioning. From childhood onward, they were told the world would bend for them, that their feelings were instructions, that someone would always show up, that effort mattered less than expression, that adulthood would somehow work itself out. But reality doesn't follow that script. Life demands resilience. Life demands discipline. Life demands problem solving, not performances. And when those demands arrive, bills, kids, stress, decisions, responsibility, many find themselves facing skills they were never taught and expectations they were never warned about. The shock isn't just that life is hard, it's that nobody prepared them for hard. Comfort replaced competence, validation replaced accountability, protection replaced preparation. So when adulthood finally hits, it's like being thrown into deep water without ever learning to swim. And drowning doesn't happen because they're weak. It happens because they were assured the water would never be deep. This is the root truth. The collapse isn't from lack of ability, it's from lack of preparation. There is a way out of this mess, but it's not the quick, emotional, feel-good solution modern culture keeps selling. It's practical, it's uncomfortable, and it actually works. The real fix starts with skills, not slogans. Learning how to manage emotions, communicate honestly, handle money, take responsibility, and navigate conflict. These are the foundations adulthood is built on. Without them, everything else collapses. Next comes discipline. The one word everyone avoids because it demands consistency instead of excuses. Discipline turns chaos into structure. It replaces panic with progress. It builds the habits that keep life stable even when emotions aren't. And finally, resilience. The ability to face difficulty without breaking, quitting, or blaming. Resilience is not cruelty, it's capacity. It's the muscle that lets people handle pressure without falling apart. None of this is glamorous, none of it goes viral. But this is the path that works. For men, for women, for anyone trying to build a life that doesn't crumble at the first sign of stress. Culture keeps offering validation. Reality keeps demanding competence. And the ones who choose the harder path, they're the ones who actually escape the cycle. Men need to hear this clearly. Your future depends on who you choose. One wrong decision can drain your money, your time, your peace, and your entire purpose. Pay attention to the markers. If she avoids accountability, if every problem is someone else's fault, if chaos follows her everywhere, if she treats stability as boring, if she wants commitment without responsibility, these are not quirks. These are forecast indicators, showing exactly what life with her will become. A good heart is not enough. A pretty face is not enough. Emotional chemistry is not enough. Men must choose based on character, consistency, and competence, not pressure or loneliness. You're not being harsh, you're protecting your future. Because the cost of ignoring red flags isn't just a bad relationship. It's losing years you can't get back, goals you abandon, and a version of yourself you might never recover. Choose carefully, or you'll pay the price in full. In the end, it won't be opinions, feelings, or online narratives that decide anything. Reality will make the final call. And reality is brutally fair. It rewards the prepared and exposes the unprepared every single time. Life doesn't pause for anyone's comfort. Bills still come. Responsibilities still stack. Consequences still grow. And the world keeps moving, with or without those who refuse to grow with it. Some will adapt. Some will break. Some will blame everything except themselves. But reality doesn't negotiate. It simply reveals who can stand and who collapses under the weight of their own choices. The truth is simple. Only those who build discipline, structure, and emotional strength will survive what's coming. Everything else, the excuses, the performance, the denial, will fall away, because in the end, reality always wins.